In today's video, we're back with all the latest NHL news and rumors. Teams we're focusing on today include the Dallas Stars, the Pittsburgh Penguins, Montreal Canadiens, Edmonton Oilers, Winnipeg Jets, and more. We'll get into all the latest coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of news and updates here to get caught up on. As most of you who follow the channel closely know, I've been away on holidays for the past 10 days. So the past 10 days worth of content was all pre-recorded about a week or so before I took off on vacation. So with all that being said, we're back into our normal routine here with daily content, keeping you up to date on all the news from all around the NHL. So let's dive into today's content. First of all, I want to get started here with the Dallas Stars. Now, as we know, defenseman Julius Honka remains unsigned without a contract and has signed a contract to play over in Finland, but that contract does have an out clause which will allow him to return to North America and come back to the NHL should he get a contract, which obviously is going to result in him being traded first because he's made it clear he no longer wants to play for Dallas. He wants a fresh start and a new opportunity to go to a new NHL franchise. And of course, the Dallas Stars have gotten off to a slow start here, so they might be able to use him to kind of bring back something to help out, although I don't really think he's going to fetch more than a mid-level draft pick or possibly maybe another prospect in a similar type of situation that also needs a fresh start. That might be something that we actually see. But of course, the Stars, like I said, have gotten off to a struggling start. But according to an article by author Mike Heika of NHL.com, he feels the Dallas Stars are likely going to be more patient before we see anything more significant. Obviously, trading Honka is something that's still a priority. There's no point in having him unsigned. They'd like to get something in return, but I don't think they're in a stage right now where they're going to panic. But he feels that they likely could make a bigger move later into the season, kind of like what we saw last year when they acquired Matt Zuccarello near the NHL trade deadline. But the Stars are certainly a team to keep your eye on. Things have not started the way they were hoping for, so that likely could result in some moves sooner than later, depending on how things go. They can get a few wins together and get things to be a little bit more respectable record, then we likely won't see anything too quickly here. But I certainly expect Jim Nill to be on the lookout for making some potential moves to kind of get things righted here so they can salvage their season if things get off the rails too far too long here. Now let's jump over and take a look at the Winnipeg Jets. Now the latest on defenseman Dustin Byfuglien is all indicators from most NHL insiders feel he's more than likely leaning towards retirement. And we did get some news out of TSN's Bob McKenzie indicating that word is that he did not train or keep himself in shape at all over the summer. And he didn't skate, didn't really do much of anything. He basically went into retirement mode, showed up to training camp on the first day and advised the team that he wanted to take a leave of absence and really was not ready or willing to play at this time. So of course, as we know right now, he is suspended without pay and until they await further a final decision, I guess, on Byfuglien's part. But that was a big blow to their blue line. The Winnipeg blue line's been one of the bigger stories around the NHL so far this year. It's been absolutely decimated with the guys that they lost through free agency. And then of course Byfuglien and Josh Morrissey got hurt and Kulikov's on a leave of absence too. Like, this blue line is completely different than we had a year ago. So far, the Jets are doing okay, but they're certainly going to be a team to watch. I do fully suspect the odds of Byfuglien retiring are pretty good. I mean, he's not getting paid right now, so they can remain that way, suspended without pay for, I guess, hard to say how long, an indefinite period of time for right now. But I would imagine at some point we're going to get an announcement that he's not coming back. At least that's my gut feeling on the situation based on everything else we've got. Considering where he's at in his career and how big of a man he is, he's probably close to 300 pounds after not training all summer. I really don't see him being able to come back and be able to compete at a decent level. If he started training now, it's going to take him quite a while to get in shape. I just don't see that happening. Unfortunately for the Jets, Byfuglien was a big part of that team's blue line, a big leader in that team, and it certainly is a big blow to not have him there in the lineup. But with all that being said, with all the other things going on with the blue line, it is rumored that the Jets would love to acquire a defenseman, and they're taking a look at Florida Panthers veteran Mark Pysyk, who is apparently getting some other interest from around the NHL as well. Because of his cap hit, he's making over $2 million. There is belief that the Florida Panthers would like to move him. Obviously, they have enough other blue liners to fill their needs, and they'd like to get him an opportunity to play somewhere else, free up a little bit of cap space, the roster spot, etc. And obviously, a team like Winnipeg is in desperate need of some veteran help on that blue line. So there might be a possibility there. I'm not sure what it would take to acquire Pysyk. Probably wouldn't be a whole lot, especially if they're going to take that contract on. It is possible Florida might have to eat a little bit of that contract to make the move, but I guess we will see. Either way, the Jets are fully expected to be looking for some other answers to their blue line, but they need to have some answers from in their own internal situation first before they can really kind of pull the trigger and make some moves on that front. Now, of course, we saw the San Jose Sharks get off to a really slow start to this season as well, losing their first 4 games. They finally get a W in the last game after signing veteran Patrick Marleau and returning him on a league minimum 1-year contract. Of course, there was lots of talk, lots of speculation about the Sharks re-signing Marleau throughout the entire offseason. And of course, it never happened. But of course, after the season started, they ran into numerous injuries and other issues, so they needed a player. They brought Marleau back, and he started off in a big way, scoring a couple goals in the first game back. But there is belief from NHL insiders out there that the Sharks may not be done after coming off to a slow start, that they might be looking for some additional moves, some additional help. And they do have a lot of guys that are on expiring contracts that they could consider moving to make some upgrades. So we'll see what Doug Wilson decides to do here. I would imagine it would be at the forward group position, possibly in goal. You're not going to see a whole lot of movement on that blue line. We've already saw, obviously Karlsson and Burns have big time contracts. Vlasic's there as well, eating up a lot of minutes. They could consider moving a guy like a Dillon or a Tim Heed, something to that effect. I mean, it is a possibility. But with all the other contracts, like an Aaron Dell, for example, in goal, is a pending unrestricted free agent. There's been a lot of talk about their goaltending between him and Jones being inconsistent. That very well could be something that we see, but they also lost a fair bit at the forward group as well, with guys like Joe Pavelski and Jonas Donskoy both vacating through free agency as well. They are losing a little bit of offense there. They still have a lot of great pieces there in San Jose, and I am confident they will get things together and certainly improve their play after a rocky start. But I would not be surprised, based on everything we're hearing from NHL insiders, that Doug Wilson could be looking to make some additional moves and maybe upgrade the forward position or possibly the goaltending situation, which, like I said, if it's going to be in goal, I would imagine Dell would be moved over Jones, just mainly due to the contract, and it'd be a much easier deal to complete. Now, there has been some more talk recently, too, about Edmonton Oilers forward Jesse Puljujärvi, who, like Julius Honk, has been playing over in Finland. He's been playing pretty well over there at a point-per-game level, looking pretty solid. Obviously, I know it's not the NHL, so not to say that he's going to jump back to the NHL when given the opportunity and jump in and perform the same way, but it is encouraging to see the fact that he's playing over there and performing quite well. He's had some really nice goals, some really nice plays, so he's obviously getting himself back into a more confident type of player, getting back into his groove, which hopefully will boost his value and increase more teams inquiring on the young forward with the Edmonton Oilers. Now, of course, many believed before that they were going to be looking for like a draft pick, possibly another young prospect in return, given the fact that he was such a high draft pick. I mean, obviously, there's other players out there in similar situations, like a Josh Hosang, for example, with the New York Islanders. Maybe they could swap players in that regard. Not really sure that the Oilers are going to want to take on Hosang, though. I think they have enough things going on. Obviously, they got a hot start right now. They're still undefeated. James Neal's performing real well. They don't want to mess too much with that, bringing in a guy like Hosang, who does have a lot of baggage in his history. So I'm not really sure that would be a wise move on their part. But obviously, he's another guy like Puljujärvi who's looking for a fresh start and is sitting and waiting for that opportunity to happen. But the team that's been mostly linked to Puljujärvi, even though they're off to a good start as well as the defending champion St. Louis Blues, it is believed that the Oilers and Blues had talks before about a possible Puljujärvi for Klim Kostin trade. Obviously, I think that would likely get the deal done if you're Edmonton. I'm not really sure. Maybe that wasn't the exact offer because it never actually came to be, obviously. But Kostin was rumored to be on the trade block for the Blues for an opportunity to acquire Puljujärvi. So I guess we'll see. But right now he's playing really well over in Finland. There has been more interest kind of generating because of that. And the Blues right now seem to be the team that's linked to him the most. But of course, there's likely other stealth teams out there that we're maybe not be aware of yet that are inquiring as well. But I would not be surprised if sooner than later Puljujärvi is moved and comes back to the NHL sometime before the halfway point of the year. Now, it is believed that the Montreal Canadiens might actually run into some issues getting young prospect defenseman Alex Romanov signed. Of course, he's playing over in the KHL for CSKA. He could possibly be signed by the Montreal Canadiens at the end of this year once his KHL season comes to an end. The contract he's on with CSKA does expire at that point in time, so he very well could be free to sign with Montreal. The only issue with a lot of these players at that stage signing an entry-level contract is they can make more money in the KHL. Now, long-term, of course, he'll make more money in the NHL, provided that he has a fairly successful run with Montreal and could certainly qualify for a bigger and better contract after coming out of his entry-level deal. But for younger players like that, they can sometimes make more money over there, and it is going to be a challenge for Marc Bergevin to get him signed. sign. So it is believed that Marc Bergevin is going to be heading over to visit with him in December and to spend some time with him, see if he can work on talks. Obviously, they can't come to an agreement on a contract as of yet because he's still tied to the KHL contract, but it was also believed that he and his family come over and spent time with the Habs organization and Bergevin and his staff earlier throughout the summer too. So there's encouraging signs in the way that they're keeping these talks going, but Marc Bergevin seems to realize that he's in a little bit of a competitive situation to bring over the Russian defenseman. So we'll see here, but not a guarantee that the Habs are going to be able to get him signed. There are some concerns that they're going to have some stiff competition from CSKA, who will likely offer bigger money to try to retain his rights beyond the current season. And of course, as most of you are likely aware as well, the Pittsburgh Penguins have been hit hard with injuries as of late, with star Evgeny Malkin and Nick Bjugstad both being out for longer terms, likely about 4 to 6 weeks each. That's certainly not the kind of news that the Pittsburgh Penguins are looking for. Who I personally, like, if you watch my other videos about all the predictions, I do have some concerns over the Penguins this season, and obviously having guys like that out for a lengthy period of time is certainly not going to bode well. There's been a lot of talk about Jim Rutherford making some trades leading into the start of the season, which never came to be, and now there's a lot of questions out there from NHL insiders like Bob McKenzie wondering if the Penguins might try to make a move. Now, of course, the Penguins are in a very tight salary cap situation, so it'd have to be a money in, money out type of transaction if they're going to make a trade. There was a lot of talk about Jack Johnson being moved on the blue line. Of course, that has not come to be. There's been a lot of interest as well, and other players like UC Rukala as well as the names come up, as well as Eric Branson. It's really hard to say if any of those guys could be moved for the right deal, but many believe that they could be looking for some kind of help at the forward position. Now, another option for the Penguins would be to look to the free agent market. There's still some veterans out there that are looking for work, and one forward that's getting a lot of attention up there by several teams, according to Bob McKenzie, is forward Brian Boyle. Now, of course, Boyle would be a guy who could play that number 3 center role, or number 3, number 4, bottom 6 type of center. Great history, as a good face-off man, good penalty killer, pretty versatile guy. Might be something that they could do, sign to a cheap contract, rather than make a trade, because some of the trade pieces they have may or may not be attractive to other teams, so they could turn to a player like him. But according to McKenzie, there are several teams inquiring, and most of them have to make other moves to facilitate either a roster spot or the necessary cap space to get Boyle under contract. But it is rumored that he's got numerous teams inquiring with him that certainly have some pending offers that kind of have requirements for some other transactions to take place to make the room. But Brian Boyle is getting a lot of consideration out there right now for an NHL job, and the Penguins are a team that I would not be surprised would be linked to him. It would certainly make a lot of sense with the injuries to Malkin and Bjugstad. I'm not really sure that the other defensemen they're looking to trade might be all that attractive to other teams, so therefore they might have to go down another road. There's also been some talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs maybe making an upgrade in the backup goaltender situation. Obviously, it was certainly an interesting piece of their team to watch through the preseason and training camp. Obviously, they had Hutchison battling there with Michael Neuwirth, who didn't really work out again because of injuries and whatnot, so he was cut loose. Hutchison hasn't had the greatest start, but I know Babcock certainly defended his play, saying that the team hung him out to dry in his one start. He had made another appearance as well. Freddie Anderson's stats are not the greatest as well, but obviously we know he's not going anywhere. And the team in front of him certainly have had a couple of games like the Tampa game last night where things did not go overly well. So the goaltending statistics right now for the Leafs don't look great, and there is some talk out there that they very well might be looking to make a move for a more veteran player and the backup goaltender position. But like the Penguins and a lot of the other teams right now, they're really tight up against the cap, and any move they make is going to be complicated. So it certainly would be a difficult move to make, but there are many NHL insiders out there thinking that the Leafs very well could make that type of move earlier in the year if possible, if the right deal comes along. There was lots of goaltenders put through the waiver wire heading into the start of the NHL season, many of which ended up being assigned to the minors, so there very well could be some other options that they could look to bring in another player to see if they can upgrade over Michael Hutchison. But as their players return from injury, like Travis Dermott and Zach Hyman, they're certainly going to have to make some adjustments to their roster to kind of make room for everybody as well. So I would not be surprised to see the Maple Leafs make a few more moves here over the next few weeks as some of these players begin to return from injury. And of course, a couple of top defensemen around the NHL like Roman Josi and Alex Pietrangelo are certainly continuing negotiations for contract extensions with their respective clubs. In Josi's case with the Nashville Predators, many are surprised that this deal is not done here as of yet. It was rumored just a matter of a few weeks ago that the extension talks were going relatively well, but now we're hearing they've run into some roadblocks. They have a bit of a snag. Obviously, there's some things that they don't necessarily agree on as of yet. It is believed that he could be looking somewhere around the $9 million mark. So obviously, that's a big contract for Nashville to take down out with their situation as well. I know they'd probably like to move a player out in order to ink him to this long-term contract, and it has not happened as of yet. But obviously, it's something they don't have to worry about this year because it wouldn't kick in until next year. But certainly the OC contract negotiations continue for the Predators. But like I said, we are hearing that there's been a bit of a snag, and obviously there's some parts of the contract that they're having difficulty agreeing on. Now, in regards to the Blues and their captain, it sounds like they might be looking for a comparable something to Oliver Ekman-Larsson in Arizona, maybe somewhere around the $8 million mark. But I think personally he would likely command probably closer to 9 on the open market if he hits to be an unrestricted free agent next summer. But I guess we'll see based on what Doug Armstrong was saying. It kind of sounds like he expects a lot of these players with the Blues, like we've seen, like with the Braden Chen extension as well, that they kind of take a bit of a hometown discount to kind of keep the band together after winning a Stanley Cup last year. Obviously, a lot of these players are getting rewarded with bigger contract extensions, but at the same time, he kind of expects them to, leave a little bit of money on the table to kind of make the team as competitive as possible. Sounds like he's really gearing towards the Bruins model. We've seen the Bruins players have a lot of very team-friendly contracts that they've been able to put together, and he's trying to obviously use that as the model to shape this team for the future. Obviously, last year's Stanley Cup champions want to remain competitive and be a contender for many years to come, and they may very well be able to do that if they can lock up their key guys here for reasonable team-friendly contracts for the long haul. So I guess we'll remain to be seen on those two contract negotiations and how things go, but I would not be surprised to see either deal get done sometime here in the short term. But again, at the same time, there's not a real rush or a sense of urgency from both sides, so they very well could end up dragging on a little bit longer depending on how everything goes. So of course, as always, I want to know your thoughts and opinions and everything we discussed here today down in the comment section. Let me know what you think and we'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future videos. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.